All right, let's do this. This is my first time doing it, so hopefully it's gonna work out. Doing what you ask, drawing stuff on, being recording myself drawing stuff and then posting it on my Patreon. So hopefully this will give you some insight into my process and how things work and that sort of thing. Maybe eventually I'll go ahead and start doing stuff like this, live. But yeah. So this is a piece of art that I'm doing for my Humblewood D&D game. This is Alderheart, which is the great tree at the center of the Humblewood, where all the bird folk live and all the humble folk live below the tree, beneath the tree. Anyway, I've always wanted to draw sort of a nice one like this. This is inspired by a piece of art that I saw online. A friend of mine is ordering a wall art thing, which is basically a big tree in a magical forest, and I'm just sort of borrowing from that idea. I looked online to see what alder trees look like, and they're kind of skinnier than this, but I needed it to be wider, so this is clearly a magically enhanced tree. Yeah, so what I did was I drew it on paper, this watercolor pad. I like the texture of it, with pencil, and did some erasing work and so on, and I just took a picture of it with my phone and then brought it. My phone automatically uploads everything to Dropbox, and so I just grabbed it in Dropbox and opened it in Photoshop, and so here is the image. Where's the cursor? Can you see the cursor? You can't see the cursor. That's fine. Can you see me? Anyway, so here it is in Photoshop. First of all, the file size that the photos come in are pretty big, lots of megapixels, but I want it to be even bigger. So I'm going to take this image. Can I actually draw on here? Yeah, I can. Okay. I'm going to take the image. I'm just going to make it larger. Honestly, I like 16 by 9. Gives me room in the edges to drag stuff and move things around. So it's just making a larger canvas than what I had before. I'm going to make sure the background is white. That way I don't have to mess around too much. And then, yeah, there we go. And then I'll just take the drawing. I probably should have made a new layer. Anyway, all you people that do art for a living are probably saying, holy God, this guy's terrible. Anyway, it's my process. That's how it works. So I'm just going to select, using the selection tool, where the art is, and then go Control T, which is the transform tool, and just drag it out. When Photoshop changed, because Photoshop always changes, and nobody ever likes the changes. So when Photoshop changed, so that whenever you would drag things, it would actually constrain, so that it would actually go wider as well when you grab the middle handles. I got mad. Turns out, because I always used to go Shift. You used to go Shift in order to unconstrain, to force things to constrain, and so it reversed it. Turns out it's a good idea. Anyway, so there you go. There's the tree. Always the question of, are we actually going to use the pencil art in the final piece, or are we just going to draw over it and delete the pencil art? I kind of like this pencil art. We're not actually going to use it. However, I'm going to make a new layer. Control J, Command J if you use Mac, and I'm going to make another. So I have the same layer 3 times. I'm going to go in the background and go Shift Control Delete. No, Control Delete. No, Control A and then Shift Delete. Good, God damn it. Anyway, to make it white, and I'm just going to hide that second layer. Shut up. I'm going to hide the second layer so that all we see. So now we have a white background, and the second layer is hidden because I don't want to. Photoshop is not non-destructive. It means if I were to actually draw on this layer and do something, it would ruin it. So I'm just going to make it hidden. Let's work with the top layer. Now, what I want to do. I think I'm going to use the lasso tool and just kind of like grab the edges. And then get rid of them. What did I just do? I didn't use the... Did Photoshop seriously freeze on me? Yeah, okay. I'm going to go Control D to deselect, and I'm going to try that again. Just getting rid of all the black. Well, I have my selection tool. So this is something I didn't use for many years, but it's actually very handy. If you look at the top here where the cursor Don't know how to make the cursor show up like they do in the. In fact, the cursor's not visible. That's weird. Okay, hang on. While I talk, I'm going to look for. I'm sure I can make the cursor visible. Color space, buffering, auto output, capture audio only. Hopefully it's capturing. Yeah, it's capturing audio. That's not what I want to mess with. No, I don't want the properties for the video capture device. That's working great. I want to go to the properties of the display capture. Display capture, capture cursor. Here we go. Good. So now you can see my cursor. Great. So at the top here, where the selecting tool is, you have the first one, which is your, which basically only selects things. Like every time you select something, it deselects whatever was selected before. If you do this one, it's additive selection. So you don't have to hold down the shift key when you start a new selection if you want to keep adding to your selection. Like if you're cutting someone out of a background, you want to go bit by bit. And this is the subtract selection tool, which allows you to cut away from selections. And then this one here is the, I think it only keeps the part that's together, yeah. So if you make two selections and you only want to keep the part that they share, whoops, you get that. So I'm just going to go to the additive selection. So we have this. I'm now going to go. I'm going to change it from a normal layer to a multiply layer. No, I don't want to do that because the background's. No, I'm just going to keep it. No, goddamn, I'm going to keep it normal layer. I'm just going to go Control L, which is your levels, and I'm just going to brighten the white, darken the dark. If you find it's too yellow, you can just desaturate it. Image, adjustments, desaturate. Dunk. That's good enough. Okay, so here we have, the drawing. Now I'm making it smaller in the screen because I want to have the top of the tree a little more visible. So if we go to our pen tools, my favorite go-to pen tool is the Kyle Ultimate Thinking Thick and Thin. The default size of it, that's pretty good. Just using Control Z. I also keep the history here so that you can just go back and undo stuff without having to go Control Z a bunch of times. Okay, so I'm going to make some new layers. I'm going to go Control J, Control A, delete, so that it's an empty layer. There's just nothing in it. And in this, I'm going to make this layer the. Might as well start working on the tree. I'll call this the tree. So I'm zooming in using Alt and the scroll wheel on my mouse. I like to go mouse and pen. I'm using a pen tool. I have a Gaomon tablet, which is kind of a fairly inexpensive, it's like $350 tablet. There's also an HD monitor. It looks good, it works well. It doesn't have a finger input, it only uses the pen, which I like because I like to get all over my tablet and stuff. So, all right, well, I'm just going to kind of start roughing in this tree. So I already drew in the skeleton of it, but now I just want to kind of go over this. I feel like my paintbrush is not right. Yeah, it is. Okay, it is. Yeah, good. Oh, it's because it's not black. That's why. Okay, let's start over. So I'm just going to, my phone's going delete. So I'm just going to kind of make a jagged edge around these leaves. Now we're trying to capture scale here. This tree is thousands of, meters tall kind of thing. It's huge. This is like the skyscraper tree that the government kind of live in. So I'm just going to go around. Do I still look okay? Yeah, I guess it's okay. I just had my camera, I took it off the mount and it's just sitting on my desk. Because I find that if I leave it in the mount, which is above my monitor, and I turn it to face me, all you see is the bald top of my head. So, no fun. No fun for you. There we go. Probably going to use some leaf or brushy brushes that make I think it's called the bushes brush, which actually will make things that look like leaves, but they have to be super small because this tree is so far away. Yeah, I'm just going to go in here. So one of my patrons asked me if I could do some, live map drawing, and I will do that. When they asked, if I could do that, I said, "Oh, it's too hard to figure out. I'm an artist, not a tech guy, whatever." Well, I had a D&D game yesterday, and we normally play this D&D game on a streaming channel, but the streaming channel was off for the holidays, and we wanted to make sure the game was at least recorded in case the streaming channel decided they wanted to run it. And so I said, "Oh, I'll do it," because they need somebody with a bit of bandwidth, right? And I've got it. So I thought, "Oh, I'll just set up OBS rather." So there are platforms on the side of this tree, and I'm trying to make them look like, how mushrooms, those mushrooms that grow on the sides of trees, kind of look. And one thing I like about digital art is you can zoom in all the way, and lines that you thought looked great before look really chunky now. Oh god, it's awful. I'm just going to delete those things. Yeah, so one of my patrons, don't even remember the name. I'm really like I have a Patreon and it's great, and I have a bunch of people. Well, I seem to have a few more people joining than kind of drop off every month, which is great, and I'm posting lots of stuff. Although I must say, in November, December, I didn't post a lot of stuff. I traveled for work, and I was really busy. And towards the end of the year, I tend to get burned out of D&D, and so I wasn't generating as many maps and things like that. So I didn't post as much stuff. So hopefully people aren't, thinking that I'm losing interest in my Patreon, because I'm not losing interest. It's just a strange business model, how Patreon works, right? Because unless you post stuff and then remove it, people can kind of join your Patreon. Here, I'm just going to try to draw like a little bunch of houses here. So the official art for Humblewood has a lot of these domed ceilings on top of things, which I think are pretty cool. I like to make them look like mushrooms, Yeah, something like that. Another cool thing about drawing digitally is when you erase things, you can erase in layers, you can erase. You just kind of clean up your drawing. See, this is probably like an ADHD thing, which I'm undiagnosed. I'll get into the weeds of the details of something, that doesn't help me advance the project, but it's a great part for that thing. So it might be a little too big if I want to capture the scale of this tree. Doesn't look terrible. Anyway, so getting back to my story, so this patron said it'd be really cool to see my process on how I make maps, because I make my maps using Incarnate, which is an online mapping software or mapping resource, which is really great actually. Incarnate, I really love it. They're I presume all digital tools and software companies and things just kind of like have a, they start off, they have a life, and then they kind of peak, and then either the owners, their revenue model isn't made properly, and they kind of run out of money to do development or to improve their thing. But Incarnate is just amazing at the all the stuff that they're adding. So they're really reinvesting in their rise in popularity. They just released like a huge winter pack for a lot of their different stamp sets. One thing that I find that must be difficult for them to manage is the fact that they have, several different map styles that they're supporting. The continental maps, and then the city maps, and the watercolor maps, and these things. And so whenever they make a new map set, winter, so they've actually released a winter one for a whole bunch of their different schemes, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, so this person wanted me to draw some maps on Incarnate, because Incarnate is a cool tool. It looks great, but it's kind of like, when people will buy artists' tools and then don't understand why they can't make nice art. It's because it still requires either like raw natural skill, which some people can have, but generally it just requires practice And especially for mapping, it just requires you to be able to copy good maps until you can figure out how to make your own using those skills you gain from copying good maps. So, you know, clone stamp. Whoops. So I'm just kind of drawing little buildings on the sides of the tree. Just gonna zoom out and look at it. So if I remove the layer that's below it, this is what I've drawn so far on top of the pencils. So in fact now I find that I'm losing track of what I've drawn, what I haven't drawn. So I can make the pencils slightly less opaque. Don't forget to go back to the layer that you're drawing on, so that we can see what we're doing. Anyway, so yes, I'll be doing some incarnate maps. Turns out OBS, the software that I'm using to record this stuff that's on my screen and my video image of myself, is pretty easy to use. I don't want to brag, but they've designed it for dummies like me to be able to use it. Fairly easily, and so you can capture just a whole window, which is what I'm doing. I'm capturing everything that's on my second monitor. Make sure that your browser's not open and stuff like that, or invisible, or hide your browsing history, or make sure you don't have any weird tabs open for research purposes, actually. But yes. So I'm going to be able to show, and in fact I'm doing a mansion, Tressendar Manor, which is from Lost Mines of Phandelver. It's a ruined manor that the players, the bad guys have a hideout in the ruined basement, or the caves underneath Tressendar Manor. And one of the rewards for winning the scenario basically is that they give you the heroes get control, or they are gifted this ruined manor. And so our party, after having saved the town or whatever it is that we did, we were gifted this manor. And so I offered to kind of develop it for the party using Incarnate. And so I could do some live sessions, or maybe just record some sessions and put them on to show people how it works, because it's not, there's more to it, right? Obviously, like I said, you can't just be good at Incarnate, So I think I'm only gonna do this part of the tree in the layer, I think. Now this image that I'm thinking of has a tree with these weird fairy lights glowing in the branches, and I think I'm going to add them at the end. But I do want to have some towers sticking out. And of course, as always, let me know. One thing that's weird about Patreon is there's not a lot of engagement with my patrons, right? A lot of the patrons on my Patreon are friends of mine who are following to support me. Thank you very much. You really don't have to. It's fine. Pretty much all the income that I get from Patreon now is just enough to cover all the Patreons that I'm following, who are some of my friends and people that I know and things like that. So. And I find that I'm not really good at going onto Patreon to collect the stuff that people are putting out there. Like 2 Minute Tabletop has some really great stuff, and I just haven't been good to go in there and grab stuff If only because whenever I do maps on streaming games, I don't want to use other people's maps. I want to use my own maps. So, not because I don't like them. I think they have great maps. It's just I don't want to use stuff that belongs to somebody else. Especially, one of the things that I want to do is, sell maps and get people to join my Patreon because of the cool maps that I do. So, cool maps and cool art. It's not terrible, I guess. I want the branches in the back to be a little darker, but that's going to be a color thing. So I think I want to have a bunch of houses on the branches here. Yeah, and I definitely think I like the idea of them looking like mushrooms, so here we go. And again, I was just kind of drawing them in. Do they look a little bit, like the Little Mermaid, the famous Little Mermaid penis VHS cover? Who knows? If you see penises here, that's a thing of your own creation. Also, things that I just drew that you assume look like, yeah. So, yeah, anyway. Just kind of gonna go through here and delete. I hear my wife coming and she's gonna talk to me. So hopefully she won't talk to me. Oh, no, we're good. Thank you for not coming in. Yeah, so there we go. How long have I been? I have been recording for 21 minutes. I'm going to go 30 minutes, I think. I think that's a good size, a good chunk of time to be making these. I can kind of release 30-minute videos. I can post the first few on, YouTube or whatever, so people can see that what I've been doing. I find that all of these look like shit, so I'm just going to go in here, use my fancy D&D Selection tool, and there you go, all gone. And I will build more. I want to go back down to look more like these things here, so yep, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So does anybody else find that they're a little bit burned out, even though 2022 has just begun and it should be a new year? I feel like it's all already I feel kind of burned out a little bit. So really hope that I hope more new variants of this. People listening to this in the future will be like, variants of what? What happened? More new variants of this COVID disease aren't found that are even worse than Omicron, the one that's currently ravaging our health system. All right, so there you go. Yeah, it's not terrible. I think I want to go onto the ground and just kind of make some houses that are and we're using a kind of a long lens if you're into photography, so that there won't be too much perspective. It's almost isometric the way I'm drawing this. as always, comments are appreciated. Messages, whatever you like. You know, you're paying well, you're a huge monthly fee of $3 or whatever your local currency is to have access to all this stuff. So. So during quarantine, I've been building a lot of model kits and doing a lot of drawing and doing a lot of dungeons and stuff. My output in maps for October was pretty high because I was it was Maptober, and I think I did 16 maps before I burnt out, before I just stopped. I had a lot of other stuff going on in October. I was designing a scenario for Penny Dragon Games. Hopefully, you know, soon that will be published. Actually, it's coming out. It's coming out in one of their mags of holding. So Penny Dragon Games. It's another outfit that I follow on Patreon, and also you can follow them on Twitch or kickstart their mags of holding, which are basically Dungeons and Dragons supplements that they put out every few months. Yeah, it's not bad, I guess. I think I like the mushrooms better than the little buildings, but I'm gonna do some that just look like little domes. What would that look like? That's not bad. Let's just do a few here. So here in the foreground we have this you know, some trees that are like kind of like, it's almost like we're coming over the trees to see this majestic view. We're just going to ignore them and draw behind them, because who knows where I'm going to put those when it's time to when it's time to do the foreground, which I'll do on a different layer, and you can kind of move it around, you know, use some animation tricks to force the perspective by making the lines thicker, stuff like that. I'm just trying to kind of build up these homes that go towards the tree trunk. Sort of a sprawl. Basically, this is where all the poor folk live that aren't bird folk, that don't live in the tree. They are the humble folk. You know, they're the Mapache, who are raccoons. They are the Vulpin, who are fox people. They are the Drabeens, who are little mouse folk. Hedges, who are hedgehogs. Some ground birds, you know, who are less equal than those who are more equal than others. And they live on the ground at the bottom, and it's not as nice a life, you know, as so often happens in these so-called equal societies. So we're just kind of like bringing it up the side of the tree here. I mean, if we don't like it, we can just erase it. And you notice how the pencils are pretty much now just becoming just a suggestion, like the speed limits in Quebec. You know, where I live. Yeah, so what's that look like? Yeah, we're getting there. Maybe some different ones over here. if this is just too weird, maybe I'll stop doing it. Who knows? It could be weird drawing stuff in front of people, and maybe I could just go live on TikTok, you know? And the reason why it's mushrooms, of course, is because the alder tree, Alderheart, is just crushing all of the greenery that would grow beneath it. Out to a certain, out to the drip line, basically. There's just nothing that can grow underneath it because it hides all the sunlight. So the party in the game that I'm running for Penny Dragon Games is currently in Alderheart, and I don't think I've shown them a visual of what the city looks like. I might have showed them a piece of art that came from the book, which is basically the big tree, and it kind of shows that there are windows in the trunk, because the trunk is hollow in many spots, and there are creatures that live in it, and there's also like a whole society that live in the roots underneath the tree. I forget what it's called. They have a published adventure for stuff that happens down there, where all the underbelly of Humblewood live. So I'm just drawing, a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty therapeutic. Anyway, gotta tell you. Caps on top of everything. Yeah, that's not bad. What does that look like? I think I wanted to stream away a bit. Yeah, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, so I think that's pretty good for a layer. So what I'd like to do, just want to draw a solid line around the whole layer. Involves me following the top of these buildings. And even if you think you have a solid line, just draw over the whole thing, because I want to fill this with white so that when I put this on top of another layer I won't see through it. It might seem like a crazy thing to do, but it's pretty much, I've developed this this over the time. Kind of helps me draw stuff a little bit faster. I feel like this is pretty solid. Just want to make sure everything's good here. Just looking across the top here, this is good. Yeah, good. Just want to make sure the line is solid. there's like cranes and stuff. We can kind of add those, you know, platforms. There are little people on them. Anyway, yeah. So I just want to get that done pretty good. Just gonna draw this line across the top here. Alright, so there we go. I'm going to create a new layer, empty layer, and we're going to call it tree color. And then we'll go back to the tree layer. Well, just in order to remove confusion, I'm going to deselect everything. I'll leave the background because the background stops you from seeing the checkerboard. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the tree layer, which is the ink layer, and I'm going to select everything outside of it. I have to deselect the, yeah, so I'm going to select everything that's outside of it. Just going to make sure that nothing inside of it is got the lines around it. Nope. I'm going to go select invert so that I'm selecting everything instead of, so I'm now selecting everything that is inside of that line that I drew around the tree. And then when I go to tree color, I'm just going to fill it with, I'm going to go slightly off white. So that fills everything, and then you go, and then you make the layer style to be multiply. The multiply style only shows what is dark, and so this color, that's a little bright. It's a little dark, so I'm going to make it a little lighter. So if I hide this, so basically you're just seeing that, right? So now what I can do, that's the stuff in the background. So now what I can do is I can just kind of go in and I can just kind of rough in the colors. With how long have we have 37 minutes? I've gone over a little bit. So I'm just going to rough in the colors using like a different brush. Like one that I like is from it's the Spring 2020 update. I don't know what for. Probably the Grut brushes. Grut brushes is like a suite of brushes that brings in thousands of different brushes. It's called Stain Monster. I'm going to just choose some kind of a nice green color that is, you know, a little yellowish, and just kind of rough in the green tree. And this is like a watercolor. It's just a, it's like a normal brush. Like it doesn't get darker and darker as you go, but it kind of like pushes the color around. Gives you a bit of a watercolor feel, so that's cool. And then we can kind of do, you know, the ground. And so this blending mode, yeah, this looks pretty good. You can still see your drawing behind it, and if we want to add more line art afterwards, you can just remove the. Oh, fuck. Okay, so here we go. I'm an idiot. I filled in the wrong thing. So I'm gonna go. So if you look on the right side here, on the right side of the map, I'm gonna go all the way back to the paint bucket, and then because I was on this layer, and so I drew in all that watercolor stuff on the ink layer, which I don't want to do. I want to do it on the tree color layer, which is this one. So let's go again. I'm gonna make it a tiny bit smaller. There we go. Just gonna fill that in. I have a pretty beefy GPU, but it's still it's not drawing, it's not keeping up with my pen very much when I draw this. So I think the possibly recording this using OBS, or I might have. Do I have Lightroom running? Lightroom is a real pig. I don't have Lightroom running. It's a software that you use to edit raw photos that come out of cameras. You must never forget to turn off Lightroom. And often you want to reboot because often the Adobe suite tend to hog your system resources even after you terminate, you know, the application that's using it, or go to your task manager and make sure that it's terminated if your performance doesn't improve after you like shut down Lightroom, for example. There we go. Okay, that's just the tree. And here's the ground. Just gonna make that a little bit green. And you notice I've still got the that selection, um, the selection, which is the outline of this tree. Another use for having for filling it the whole thing in with a like even if I get rid of the background, you notice that there's still an opaque off-white. Um, is that you can use the selection tool to just select what is there if you want to draw on it without going over the lines, right? Like you can just go like if I unselect, go Control D, nothing's selected anymore, and if I draw, it's going to go over the lines. No, don't want to save, cancel. Control Z. But if you just go to the right here to the little thumbnail of your drawing and go Control click, it selects everything that is on this layer, which is by default everything that I've done with starting with from the white off-white fill. So let's bring in a nice brown color. And I don't use like a palette, you know, of colors. I probably should. Like I'm being a terrible artist, but I usually like make the color that I like, and then going forward I'll just like select that color from a color that's on the sheet in order to make that color again, because you don't want to have like 62 different versions of the same color unless you're at the shading stage of your art, which is much later. I'm just gonna like rough in this brown. Don't think I want my buildings to be brown. I want them to be like a bright colors. You know how, like in a Mediterranean town or a desert. Well, no, maybe not desert. Desert, like Northern Africa and stuff. Their buildings tend to not be super colorful. But no, I want these to have like red roofs and colored roofs and things. So I'm just going to quickly go over this. Like I'm just roughing the colors in right now, you know? Because what I find that my art tends to not be, I find my art's fairly shitty, whatever. It's like I'm no professional artist. But it is quick, so you can make a piece of art, and I'll do pieces of art for my games. They don't need to be professional; they just have to represent something in the game. So we did done that color. Let's try some yellowy orange. That doesn't look terrible. Another tip, if you want to, for example, draw these buildings without going, or like say you want to do these buildings here that are on the tree, but you don't want to hit the trunk. Well, go back to your selection tool, do the unselect one, and you can just kind of like draw around the buildings. And we've unselected them. So now that when we're drawing these buildings, we can't spill over onto the tree trunk. I'm going to reselect that because that's not what I want to do. So I'm just going to go back over. I'll select it again. And I mean, if you wanted really, like, if I was being hired to do this piece of art, I would probably do all these buildings on a different layer so that you can like draw them. You could draw them. You could clone them. Like do some really only 1/8 of this many buildings, but do them really nice and detailed. And then you can clone them, and then you can just kind of go boop 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 and paste them all over the place so that they look better. Alright, so I'm just going to go over this. It's not too bad. So I'm just going to reselect this green. Hopefully that's the right, and go a little, there we go. I'm just going to do the tree here. And so this is typically shading phase stuff. I'm going to go darker because the branches, the leaves that are in the back, that are deep within, are darker. It's the dark center of the tree. And as I go through and draw this, I'm seeing things that I forgot. Just going to go back to like an off color and just kind of like do those. Oh yeah, that's a nice shading. Yeah, so I can just kind of like draw the mushroomy things, which probably would be like white chaga mushrooms. Is that what those are? Gonna select some green again, make it darker. Now, what you can do, if you want it to really be dark back there, you know, because like it's the dark depths of the tree. I'll see here. I didn't draw. Oh yeah, okay, I see. That's not bad. Yeah, maybe because of the scale of this, you're not going to want to draw the branchy branch type stuff. My art style also uses, like, I leave the black lines in, like a lot of, you know, purists, oil painters that go to art school, you know, tend to only use the color to delineate lines and separation between objects and stuff. And yeah, mine's more of a kind of a European bande dessinée look, you know, which has, you know, Tintin or anything by Mobius, or Bilal or whatever. All these art styles that are basically have a black, everything's got a black line around it, and you're filling in the color. Yeah, it's not terrible. Don't hate it. Anyway, so if you really want to push the darkness, you can just go to the top here, the mode for your brush, and go multiply. I would probably go opacity 43%, because multiply is just going to keep making it, the more you draw on, the darker it gets. I'm going to make it a little bigger. See, now I'm really darkening this green here. What does that look like? Oh, that's pretty good. Am I centered in the camera? I'm not looking at the camera very much. That's another thing too, is we can really darken the ground level. Because these guys are living in the darkness, and we can have like lights on, you know? Have lights on in those houses. I feel like Bob Ross. Happy little lights down there. No, that didn't sound like Bob Ross. I apologize. You can have, people that living down in poverty can have their lights on. All right, so there we go. So we started off with something like this. I'm going to make that disappear. And then we kind of added, actually we started with something like this, like this, and then we kind of like made it so it's slightly less visible. And then we added the black lines, delete that, and then we added a bit of color. Eventually I would merge the two layers, the black line and the color. Probably will. But this is what we have for now. And also, I'm always interested when I look up at my screen, because my other monitor has much more vibrant colors. So, that's not too bad, eh? Could be worse. Just gonna go back to the brown here. Oh no, so I don't want to be multiplying. I just want to be normal. Why can't we be normal? Yeah, so there you go. So just imagine this tree that's thousands of meters tall, full of bird folk. Also, this is my new signature. Whoop. What did I do? Oh, I have to merge all these layers. Hang on. I made a new 2022 signature. Put it over here. Well, yeah, Richard Duvall, 2022. So there you go. So that's part one of the Great Alderheart, center of the Humblewood, and we'll do part two next time. Ciao.